Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. On the show, I often talk about connections, why people connect, what makes a connection valuable, how to make connections, that sort of thing. Well, my guest today has turned connections into a purpose, or maybe turned his purpose into making connections. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. And business, of course. He's a serial entrepreneur who genuinely loves to help others succeed. And he's got a creative streak as well, which I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit as we chat. Please welcome to the show the connector in chief of the Connective, my good friend, Joe Mindak. Joe, how you doing?
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for the nice introduction. I'm glad to finally be on here. Like we were saying before, I made a seat to the Johnny Carson show. I'm loving it. So.
Well, I'm sure my listeners are of the demographic where they would probably understand what the Johnny Carson show is. So that's good.
It's good, yeah.
Which is really good, and it's very flattering. Thank you so much for believing in me. Joe, and for my listeners who have heard me talk about the Connective before, and the famous Raymond McConnell, who has been a great source of both support and guests for me. He came out of the Connective, and I've been with the organization, with the Connective now for about a year, Joe? Is that about right?
Yeah,
about a year.
Yeah.
And, Joe runs the show, being the connector in chief. And I just have to say it's been one of the best experiences I've had as both as an entrepreneur and as a budding creative person.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial side of me is kind of on hiatus a little bit right now because, as everybody knows, I have a day job, but the creative part isn't. And the Connective, which is a group of professionals who are connected to one another in a referral based business, but it's a little bit more than that. I'll ask Joe to talk about it in a minute. But the Connective has been a great source of friendships. It's been a great source of interesting market intelligence and things that are going on around. But it's also been a fantastic place for me to meet great people who have turned out to be fantastic guests here on the show, and which has made them even better friends. So when you say, Joe, that it took me long enough to get you on, I mean, you gotta remember, like, you're the head honcho over there, man. I mean, I was like, why would Joe want to be on my show? But here you are.
No, I've been waiting. I'm like, what? You start to feel a little inadequate. Like, what am I missing here? But no, I knew you were getting it going and doing all that, and I knew eventually it'd be good to get on. And it's so impressive to see what you've done with it. Like, just, I love, like, I've started a few businesses, but I love seeing other people just start something and go with it. Right. Because I see so many people that just don't do it. It's like, just get off your ass and do it. Like, just try it. Look, you might not become the number one podcast on Apple or whatever, all the podcast things are, but you're doing it and you're liking it, you're enjoying it. And I'm listening to your podcasts. They're great. And it's like, it's great to see where you've gone and all the ones you have, and you're backed up with requests and people. So yeah, I mean, eventually I knew I'd get on, and I think I signed up, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, right? And it's just like, oh
yeah, man. I mean, here we are, and it's April, and it's April as we speak. We're coming out of this pandemic, I hope, and we will probably air this episode in like August-ish time. So about 3-4 months of a pipeline, which is really great, I think, for the show. It's great for me. I feel a little bit bad that my guests aren't going to be on right away, but man, I'm very blessed. I feel lucky to have been able to start something that's a lot of fun and I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and it's great to have that pipeline, to just have something it's good to have a little backup, right? Because you don't want to try and create something, rush something just to get it on for the next week. It's like good to just keep them in that lineup and have great guests on every week, and have something to show all your fans every week. Here's somebody new. So,
oh man,
but I'm excited to be on, and it's you talk about the Connective, and it's listen, it's not something that people haven't done before, right? I'm not reinventing the wheel. Like, people connect all the time and do networking groups, but it's really about the people you bring in, and we've got such a great crew of people that we just curated over the last couple of years, that the connections for me have been great. Like, like Ray connected to you, but I connected to them. Ray connected me to a new business that I've started doing this year, thanks to Ray connecting me from being in the Connective. Nikki Fielding just connected me to someone who's now helping me build the back end of the platform of the Connective. Like there's so many different facets of getting good people in a room and just getting them energized and going and saying, hey, let's all just help each other, and then just stuff starts to fly, and it's fantastic. So
Well, let's break that down in a second. I mean, you
yeah,
mentioned Nikki, by the way, and I do want to give a shout out to Nikki Fielding, who introduced me to the Connective and thereby into you. And she's been another tremendous support and mentor of mine. I mean, you know, hey Nikki, and it's that kind of a group where it's easy to make fast friends, but it's also a place to meet people who can truly help each other, and it goes a little bit different than some of your more traditional kind of business referral network type of organization. So, Joe, let's get into it a little bit. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit how you actually you've built this kind of life of as being a serial entrepreneur. You have you've had many different businesses. You currently have several businesses that you're working on. Just before we got on, you were talking about now your new furniture business, which again, it doesn't surprise me. You have this way of just saying, I'm kind of interested in doing something. Fuck it, I'm going to do it. And you just go forward, right?
yeah. Well, that's what it is. That's what we are saying about your podcast. Like, just God, there's so many people that have come and talked to me like, "Hey, Joe, you've done businesses. I want to talk to you about this idea I have." Oh, that's great. Like, go here, go do it, or I'll make a connection for them. And oh, that's great. You introduced me to this person. That's going to really help me do this. And then, hey, how's it going? I haven't gotten to it yet. Well, what the hell are you doing? And when people tell me they don't have time, I'm just like it like irks the shit out of me to be like, you don't have time. Like, I'm running 3 businesses right now, 4, I think. I don't remember. Like, and I have to keep track of all those different things. And again, I don't have a full time job per se. Like, I don't have to clock in anywhere and be somewhere for 8 hours a day, like a lot of people. But I have to keep track of, what deals going on with real estate, what deals going on with Connective, what am I doing with my Growth 10 business, what's going on, Joe? And in the meantime, I'm driving around town picking up furniture, deliver it. Like, but it's like,
Yeah.
and two
Your
kids,
dad.
2 kids, couple dogs. Like, my son's at his track meet tonight. That's why I look like this, and because I didn't have time to go shower or anything, but I knew it was going to be a podcast, so we're fine. But and in the meantime, I picked up a fence out of the garbage across the street. The guys were building a fence for my neighbor to build a dog fence, so I built that before I went to the track meet today. It's like, so it's like, just there's a lot of time in a day. Just get up early, get your workout in, get your day going, and I think a lot of people sit around and don't actually do it. So anyway, so how I got into doing this
Yeah.
stuff was just I always enjoyed connecting, and I've tried a bunch of businesses, like you say, just go out and try it. Fuck it, yeah. And sometimes it doesn't work. Like, I've had, I think, 7 businesses now. Right, 4 of
Mhm.
them failed. And that's okay. So what? They failed. Like, I learned. But when I bought the soup stores, which were the soup Nazi from Seinfeld, I had the
Mhm.
first 2 franchises. Me and a couple buddies, and we thought it was gonna be great. Buy a franchise, we'll own 10 of them, and it was a complete shit show. They didn't have all their ducks in a row. They weren't what a franchise is supposed to be. Where, hey, I've been doing this for 3 years. I got the model down. You just have to pay in and follow it, and it's good. They didn't do that, so we made a mistake of kind of not doing our due diligence on the right franchise, I guess. But what they sold us was not what we wound up buying and all that. So we learned a valuable lesson that we got to make sure that we really, if you're going to buy a business, like, really, like, look into it, make sure they're what they're doing, check on them. We just kind of went into it, but we were 27 years old. We had a couple bucks from selling some condos that we flipped in Hoboken, and we're like, hey, let's buy a franchise, make a bunch. So, but you always learn things from that. And then we started a smoothie shop in Hoboken, and we just kind of flew by the seat of our pants, right? And it's like, no, you can't do that either. You can throw shit against the wall, but you have to have some sort of plan with it, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is this going to do? How are you going to do it? Like, so we learned the next time we did that, like when we started the magazine in Hoboken, we're like, all right, let's talk about what the hell we're going to do first. Forget about naming a magazine, designing it, sales, all that. We're like, what is this magazine going to be, and how are we going to grow this thing and do it? So we decided, you know what? Here's the strategy behind the magazine. And the magazine we had in Hoboken wasn't just to start a magazine. Part of it was cool. Like, yeah, it was great. We owned our own magazine. Like, who doesn't want to be Hugh Hefner? It wasn't Playboy, but to own your own magazine was pretty cool, and it's in and of
Mhm.
itself. One, B, it's you're building a business to make money. But C, that was a driver for our marketing agency,
Mhm.
because everyone in Hoboken was either a business owner, worked in marketing, or worked for some big company that could come to us. And a lot of our clients at that time in our marketing agency were living in Hoboken. So, like, wait, all the people we want to talk to and meet for our agency live and breathe in Hoboken. Wow, what if we put out a really cool magazine to those people and get business from it? So we started getting business, people calling us when they got their magazine on the door. But we had that strategy behind it. And that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to make it the top end magazine, kind of Hamptons, the Hamptons magazine, whatever that was called, Ocean Drive in Miami. And so we had a design of what that business wanted to look like, and no politics. We weren't going to have any politics in our magazine. There's enough politics in Hoboken. We wanted to keep it all positive and only write about positive things about Hoboken, and that just drove everyone loved it. That just drove it too. So yeah, that's a long way of saying how do yes, I've started a few things, but having having the guts to throw something against the wall, but also having some sort of you know some sort of design and strategy into what you're looking to really do with that thing.
Well, it sounds like you really, I mean, you took a lot of risks and just kind of knew what you wanted to do, which was to start a business, make money, see how that worked, and eventually you got to a point where you understood the value of the plan, you understood that you needed more of an understanding of an insight into your market. I mean, the way that you approach the magazine, you're talking about knowing that Hoboken was a town of marketers and of people who are in that kind of a service field. The business services people are pretty. There's a lot of those living and working and dining and having a great time in Hoboken, New Jersey. And by the way, for our listeners who aren't necessarily aware of where Hoboken is, it is right across the river from the center of Manhattan, from where the Empire State Building is. If you know where that is, like right in kind of Midtown Manhattan. So it's like a commuting town into Manhattan, but it's also a little enclave in and of itself that's very urban. It's the home of Frank Sinatra. I grew up 2 towns away from there, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But Hoboken's a really cool kind of, it's a cool town. And to have started a magazine there and appeal to that audience, you needed to know, get the intel right at first. You needed to understand, that the magazine was not the thing. The thing was to drive your marketing agency. So you had several layers there to that plan. It took you a while to get there, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, you have an idea of what you want to do, and we started the magazine. We got people to like the magazine. They loved the content. It was important. We wrote about really cool shit in town. Like we didn't write about just the obvious stuff. Oh, Frank Sinatra. It's great. Yeah, he is from Hoboken, but everyone knew that. So like, we don't need to write about Sinatra. Let's write about the guys from Puppet Heap that make Kermit the Frog puppets in town. Like
Mm.
what are the hidden gems in town that people didn't know? The Macy's Day Parade, all the floats were built in Hoboken at the time. So all those cool things, right? To find out. So we got the audience, all right. But then it was like, all right, well, how do we get those people out of the house, right? It's great they're sitting in their home reading our magazine, but now we got to get them together to connect them. And that's when we started doing H mixers, and we started having parties once a month at a different bar. So anyone that advertised with us, we bring 100 people to their bar. We bring a charity in to do a raffle for the charity. All other advertisers would get prizes for the raffles, and then we bring in like a club, like the Hoboken Ski Club. So bring in 3 entities every time: the HMAG followers, charity, and then a club to start to more people to know about the magazine, but also more people to just connect to each other. So my job at those parties would be like, all right, I got a realtor. Hey, meet Dan. He's looking to buy a place. So my goal as the guy bringing in the sales for magazine was to make sure that anyone that advertised on our magazine got their money back by some sort of connection, right? So those parties became the place to be every month in Hoboken. We'd be at a different bar, free food, live music, free events, and people would just come and have a great time and let loose, and then meet people. And there's still people that are connected from those parties doing business together. It's been 5 years since we had them, but so yeah, we built on the premise of let's build a really cool magazine, drive. But then what else could we do? And then that turned into a music festival. We wound up doing HMAG Music Festival, which turned into Lackawanna Music Festival, which we had some great bands come and play on the pier in Hoboken, and we put on a free festival for the entire town. Come down, bounce houses for the kids, free ice cream from Ben and Jerry's, and live music all day long. So it turned into something really fun as a business, but it was also a business that was generating some decent income, and we sold it.
Well, how did you make the connections to see all those opportunities that sprung from initially the publishing business? Did you know those ahead of time, or
Well,
how did those come up?
the again, the premise with the magazine was we just want to do a magazine, right? Like
Mhm.
you want to do podcasts again, going back to, hey, if you got a good idea, throw it against the wall, see if that stuff sticks. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So we had the idea, let's do a magazine, but let's do it this way to drive traffic to our agency, right? And then it was just like, fuck it, like let's do like what comes naturally, right? So we did a music issue, right? And we're sitting around like, Hoboken was a cool music town. Maxwell's, a bunch of other places, the Guitar Bar in
Mhm.
town. Like it was a cool music vibe place. And we're like, well, if we're gonna talk about music in town and have a whole music issue, we should have a music festival to go with the issue, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, the first music festival, if you watch it, you could probably find it on YouTube. Go to HVAC Music Fest. It's pathetic. It is like one of those foot high wooden stages with like a 3 foot banner behind the guitar player that says HMAG Music Fest on it. We had one of those cheesy like machines where all the money flies around. You go in and grab as much money as you can, and just games and stuff for the kids. But it was like it cost us $2,500 to maybe put on. We had a couple local musicians that just played for free because they wanted to play, and we paid for whatever. And we're like, oh, let's do it. And we had, I don't know, a couple hundred people down there, but it was fun, right? And it was a good day. And we're like, you know what, that was cool, but let's do this bigger. So the next year we
Mhm.
did it bigger, and then next year we did it bigger. And 3 years later, I mean, we had a band called Tokyo Police Club that was our headliner. That was like, no, not for my age, but for the demographic of the sponsors that we wound up getting, which were Ben and Jerry's and Bash Shoes and a couple other
Mhm.
sponsors. They wanted that young hip crowd, and Tokyo Police Club was a young hip band. These kids were like 20-year-old from
Mhm.
Canada, and we paid them $35,000 to play for an hour. Like it was
Wait, how long did it go from $2,500 to 35,000 for just an hour? Like,
like
how many years was
I
that?
think it was 2 years after that. So I think it was like the third one we did, and then
Mhm.
we had Matt Pinfield from MTV was the host. It was pretty cool. If you ever watch 120 Minutes on MTV, it was like
Mhm.
Matt Pinfield, like, hey, it's Matt Pinfield. Like this is just his voice is like, I was talking about the airport. I remember he called me. He's like, hey Joe, Matt Pinfield, just checking in, everything. Like, and he has this distinct voice. I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking to Matt Pinfield. It's like we're
Wow.
buddies, and he was great. We hang backstage and talk about all these different bands and stuff. But like, yeah, so we started getting it to a point, and then the last year, so we didn't make any money off the festival. Every year we just broke even. First year I think we lost like 10 grand. Then we broke even with that $35,000 band and all that. And then the
Mhm.
next year I was like, you know what? We don't need that band. They didn't bring as many people as we thought they would. Right? We paid them 35 grand to bring. They should bring 5,000 people. Maybe I don't know, 1,000 showed up to see them or something. So the next year I was like, no, all right, we're gonna turn this thing into a moneymaker now. Okay, we've worked out all the kinks. Running the festival is easy. We know who the stage people are. We know who this people. We know how to do it. We don't need the big bands. We just need local bands to draw the crowd. We're gonna make money off the beer, right? The beer
Mm.
garden, the liquor, right? So we had the beer garden. We had it all set up, and that year was like, all right, everything's paid for. That was the first year we had everything covered up the festival. Everything was covered as expenses. Now, whatever we made off the beer garden, we were going to make money. And we're going to probably make, minimum of like 15, 20 grand, but probably closer to 30 or more. Right. And, you know, that was our profit off of doing a, 1 day music festival. And it was going great. And at about 4:30, clouds started coming up the
Oh, no.
river, and just it started to rain. And we're like, where the freak, like, I don't know where. It wasn't even scheduled to rain. Like they looked at
Mhm.
like the weather report, and it just started to rain, and not too heavy, but enough to just drive everyone. Like 50 people got up and just walked out of the beer garden, and then just no one ever came back the rest of the night because it was kind of cloudy and a
Mhm.
little rainy, and just that was and then after that I was like, all right, well that business is done. Like we tried, that was our chance to get money. And
Yeah.
the town wasn't really, they were great with letting us use the festival, but we were trying to do something bigger, and they kind of want to do it on their own. So we said, you know what, it's great. It was a lot of fun. We met some cool people, and we have some cool videos to show what we did. And but time to move on to something else.
It's interesting just hearing you tell the stories because, you know, I think a lot of people walk through their daily existence, and I know I've been there. And sometimes I still am there, I suppose. But people walk through their daily existence wanting to do something, and it just being, for one reason or another. And we've talked about this a lot on the show here. whether it's their own limiting beliefs, the things that have kept them back from when they were children and they just kind of it's stuck in their heads, like some voice that's telling them, no, you can't do that because of XYZ. Or it's because they've grown up and thinking, you know what? I'm not this type of person. I'm that type of person. In other words, their mindset is fixed to see something as unattainable or out of their character. Like the easiest example would be, I'm no good at math, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a book guy. I'm not good at math. Well, that's nonsense. You could be good at anything you really want to. You don't have to be good at it, but you can do it with applied effort. And, just it just takes a shift of how you look at it, a
Sure.
mindset shift.
Yeah.
It sounds like what I'm getting from you though is like you just have this mindset where the idea of what a lot of people call imposter syndrome, for example, where it's you're afraid to start something because you're worried about that you don't have the credibility to do it, or maybe even worried about what other people are going to think about you because you don't feel like the expert or able to do it. Like, who's going to come to my music festival? I'm not a music producer,
Yeah.
right? It sounds to me like you're missing the gene that has imposter syndrome. Like it's not part of your DNA. Or am I missing something? Have you experienced that a lot in your life?
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was always like, I don't know, just go for it, kind of like, what's the worst thing it's gonna do? I mean, like even when I wrestled in high school, like I was not a good wrestler. Like
Hmm.
I started sophomore year and I sucked. Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I never really learned much what to do. But the thing that I learned was how I could win, right? Like
Hmm.
so like I learned the first match. I was a sophomore, and they called me up because the other guy got hurt, right? And they're like, all right, well, Mindak's the only other 172-pounder, and he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, but if we lose the 172-pound, we don't win this match. So they just threw me in there. I wrestled this kid Tahir Thomas from East Side High. He was 15-1. He was this huge muscular kid from East Side High, like scary. Like I mean, this guy looked like he would rip my head off. And I beat him. I pinned him. I didn't just beat him. I pinned the guy. I broke two of
Hmm.
his ribs.
Jeez.
And it was just I just kept going. I was in really good shape, and I just kept like getting up and running and I mean, and I I I I didn't stop the whole time. And in wrestling, like boxing, like it takes your breath out of you're three
Hmm.
2 minute rounds, but if you ever done it, it is like impossible to breathe. So I didn't stop the whole time. This kid just got winded.
Hmm.
I took all his muscles away.
Yeah.
And I somehow threw a headlock on him, and he just couldn't fight it off. And I threw him and pinned him. Like I was like, oh, all right, well, if I win these kids out, by having so much stamina that after 3 minutes, 3 rounds, they're going to be so dead that they can't fight anymore. You saw with the Ewan McGregor fight, right? And Mayweather, right? He gassed out
Yeah.
because Mayweather was in such good shape. So anyway, I learned how to win at wrestling. Never became a good wrestler. All I had was a freaking headlock. But by the time Dan Nessel got so tired that he could hardly stand up because Joe Mindak hasn't stopped, I throw a headlock and pin you, and you can't fight anymore because you're just so gassed out, and that's the only way I won. So it's like the one match was the against Bramis, and the guy was like undefeated, like awesome, like Joe, why don't we bump you up? I'm like, no, let me go try and beat this kid. And I beat. There's another kid, and I pinned him too, and I don't know how. I mean, it was the same move, a headlock, but like so. I don't know. So I've never been like yeah, that'll be the safer one. Why don't you bump me up to the next weight, and maybe I'll be better to beat that guy than that guy. No, like I
Mhm.
don't care if Dan Nessel's the greatest wrestler since Hulk Hogan. Like I want to go wrestle him. So I guess it's the same way with business. And it's like, look, let me go try and do a music festival. Nobody shows up, big deal. Like we didn't lose any money, we didn't lose any sleep
Mhm.
over it. Who cares? It was fun. We had a good time. Like we always had fun doing whatever we were doing. Like the magazine, when I got the first issue of the magazine, I remember we'd spent, about a year on thinking about it and talking about it and finally putting it together. And we got that first issue in our hands, like a physical magazine. I remember Kevin came, my partner, and brought it to my house, and I'm sitting there holding it. I'm like, fuck if we ever do another one. Who cares? Like we
Hmm.
have a physical magazine in our hands. We did it. We produced a magazine. We have 15,000 copies of this thing. We're gonna deliver around town. We never do another one. Who cares? I have this to show. And it's like, and that's like, then it's like anything. Like, don't ever. I last summer, the whole pandemic, we are stuck home, and I always hated the color of my house. And we had been painting all these palettes, which about all these American
Mhm.
flag palettes, and was like my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna paint the house. She's like, what do you mean paint the house? I go, I'll paint the house. Like, what else are we doing? Like, they just said 6 more weeks. We're stuck inside. Like, we got
Mhm.
nothing to do. We can't, go
Yeah.
anywhere. So I'm like, I hate the color. I'm gonna go pick a color. And so she let me test the background. I want to make sure I didn't screw it. I'm
Of
very
course.
sloppy,
Mhm.
but I slowly took my time because I had it. And over the next, 4 weeks, I painted the outside of my house, which usually costs about 10 or 15 grand to do. I did it with one paintbrush and one, a couple cans of paint. It cost me $300 to paint my house. But the thing was, after that, my son's birthday was coming up. He's turning 15. So I took that paintbrush because everyone was amazed that I painted the house with one paintbrush. But I'm like, I don't, know why you need more than that. And I put it in a frame with them, in this glass box frame. And I wrote, don't ever let anyone tell you there's something you can't do, or something along the lines of that. Like,
Mhm.
in those lines. Like, you can't tell you can't paint a house. Like, I don't know. Like, let me try it. So I'm like, let me try it. And it took a while. But we had nothing
Yeah.
but time. And I'm out there with a beer and some music on, and I do an hour one day. Some days I do 2 3 hours. Some days I do half an hour. It's too hot, but little by little, you get it done.
If I were a serious, like, I guess, leadership coach or, management guru, I might be picking out some incredible lessons from what you're talking about. Like, just the idea of being relentless, but almost it's almost like in a very non-aggressive way. You're just gonna keep going until it's done. Just keep going until it's done. So you've told me already, I mean, and I've known you now for a while, Joe, but like during this conversation alone, you've talked about how just do something. If you want to do it, just do it. Don't let the fear get in your way. Just move forward with something.
Yeah,
And then you also talked about how just keep going until you figure out, how to outwind the other the opponent, or whether the opponent is actual person or another business or your own self. I mean, it just seems like just a relentless pursuit of something counts for a whole hell of a lot.
yeah. Well, you need that relentless pursuit to do something, right? You gotta, if you're gonna start your own business, you gotta, like, a lot of people that shouldn't be doing it, and then I know people that are doing it. Like, nope, you're probably not the person that should be doing this, because it's not like, oh, this will be easy. No, it's not easy, right? And like I said, a
Mhm.
bunch of them have failed, and or I just cut them off because they wasn't going to go where we wanted it to go, and you cut loose before you spend too much money on it, right? But again, it's always figuring it out. Like, is there a better way to do this thing, right? Like, is there some way you can figure out to do a little better than somebody? And if you figure that out, great. Then you have to go for it, and then be relentless about working on it and not stopping, right? But it's, listen, not I don't know. There's a lot of listen. I've also had the luxury. My wife's been great, right? My wife
Mhm.
makes good money too, so we're financially, we've always been good, and I've had great years. I've had bad years, but
Yep.
we're able to do it together. And she's always been supportive of all this crazy shit. So, like, not everyone's going to be as good as my wife has been, to be like, yeah, go do whatever you want. Like, and she's stuck doing the 9 to 5, which, she's got the steady stuff. So, a lot of it comes down to having someone that's like, yeah, I think you have a lot of stupid ideas, but some of them worked out. And, and a lot of it is also teaching our kids, like, hey, like, you could do whatever you want. Like,
Mhm.
like my wife and I now do the furniture business together. It's like, guys, I know it's annoying and all that stuff to you, but guess what? Like, you guys want to do something when you're older, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, we want you guys to do that. So all the things that we do, try to teach them some lessons. Like, we painted all the flags last year. For in the pandemic, Westfield had a fundraiser for the local businesses, and my wife and I started painting American flag pallets, and we sell them for $50 on Facebook. We thought we'd sell like 20 of them. We sold 450 flags. We raised about 25 grand, and the kids helped us the whole time. It was me, my wife, and the kids. Like,
Mhm.
they're 12 and 14, wherever they were, and they're outside every day painting red and white stripes on pallets, like, for like 4 hours a day. Like, they help, but I said, guys, you want to go back to these businesses that you love in town to love and hang out. You're helping them stay open, so when this pandemic's done, you guys can go back to those businesses, right? You don't want them to close, right? It's like, no, well, you're helping them stay open. So, all that money went to those businesses, which is great. So, yeah.
Well, you have that there's some passion or a mission or even a purpose that seems to be driving you when you are starting something new or when you're kind of going forward with one of your ventures. I mean, in the connective, for example, the connective is all about connecting. It's all about connecting business to people, people to business, making deals for the members of the connective, like helping us all to move forward in our businesses and even in our lives in some ways. And you're a facilitator of that and also a participant. I mean, you're also making introductions and deals and so on and helping to coach people along during the in the connective. I wanted to ask you more about that, like about how you then got to the point of when you started the connective. How did you get there from, I suppose, from the parties maybe in at HMAG, but because you were talking about how you were connecting people at those parties. How did you eventually get land on this idea of being a super connector and making a business out of that?
It's been, you know, I've been doing it for technically 3 years, I guess, right? Since I
Mhm.
started it as a business of doing this, right? But really, it started probably 2007, 2008, somewhere around
Mhm.
there. So a combination of things, right? I started going to BNI meetings, which are networking meetings, when I was
Yep.
about 25, and this guy Jay Shevins introduced me, and he was a super connector. Like the guy knew everybody, and he always connected me to people and helped me grow my business. I had, the magazine was directly from him because he introduced me to a guy. We did a magazine, and then we did that magazine, and then it went into something else for us doing our magazine. So he was a good source of someone that was kind of inspirational to be like, wow, I want to be like that guy. He's super connected. So I always had this thing in the back of my mind, like I want to be the guy like people call. Like you need something, pick up the phone, you call me. I
Mhm.
remember showing my mom years ago. She's like, well, "What are you doing with all this space?" I'm like, "Ma, tell me one thing you think you might need right now." A plumber. I go, "Here, I got a plumber on my phone." I wanted to,
Yeah.
I always like doing that connection and having those, be the person to call. So I started to be that person in Hoboken where people just knew I knew everybody, and from the magazine I knew everybody, so everyone would be like, "Oh, just call Joe and he knows who to call." So I started loving doing the connection. I had one couple that met at a connective at a HMAC party, and they got engaged. Right, they didn't wind up getting married, but like there's other people that are still doing business together and doing it. So I just kind of love that connection, and a lot of people love connecting. Right? They just like
Yeah.
doing it because they enjoy it, and it's nice to. I just got a kid a job here in town. His dad's in the group with me out here, and I got him like his dream job, like at an
Yeah.
engineering company, and it's like it's so cool to be like to see what you could do for somebody, and then years down the road, like they come back to you, and like I had a couple people this year that I reconnected on LinkedIn, like, Joe, yeah, I don't forget what you did for me 10 years ago. Like I was like, what? I trying to remember how the hell I know the people. Like, well, you hired me when I was just starting my business, or you got me a job, or you did that. And then now it's
Yeah.
coming back and not because I wanted to. It happens sometimes. Like I've reconnected with a couple of those guys where it could turn into something really nice. So I always enjoyed the part of connecting. And then I said back in 2007, because I got out of the printing business, right? I was like, I'm
Mhm.
not doing printing anymore. It was too much. People would not pay you, or a job would get screwed up, and then I had to eat it, whatever. And it was just like I want to do marketing. I want to do that. So, but I had $1 million worth of printing business, like
Mhm.
that. I wasn't gonna be like, well, I'm gonna walk away from that. So I went to the printers and the sign makers and the different people that we source jobs out to. I said, "Hey Dan, look, I'm not gonna do printing anymore. You do printing. Give me 10% of whatever my clients generate for you, but I'll hand over all accounts to you." All right. Well, so basically, you're handing me your accounts that you've had for a while. You know the customer. You're gonna walk them in and tell them that. And I tell them, yeah, these guys have been printing your stuff anyway. I was just marking it up. And the printers love that, and the other guys. So like one guy that does signage and stuff, still to this day, it's been 10 years. He still sends me checks once in a while when an old customer does jobs with him. I mean, he found me like 2 years ago. It's like, hey, we're trying to track you down. We got a check for you for $1,000. I was like, oh, here's my new address. So,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
it was like all that was coming to like, okay, well, people like getting new
Mhm.
customers for just a commission. People love getting connected, right? So then when
Yeah.
I sold the agency about 4 years ago, I was like, all right, I got to do. I was pursuing like the beer company and the wedding site that I have and stuff. So I was pursuing those other businesses. That's really what I wanted to start doing. But I'm like, how do I make some money in the meantime? And people still call me for marketing. Hey Joe, I need a website. Well, I don't do that anymore, but let me introduce you to my buddy Adam. He does websites, right? Hey Adam, I got this guy Dan wants to do a website. He's got 50 grand. I want to connect you with him, but how about give me a couple percentage points on that? Sure, you're just going to walk me into a customer without having to do anything, and
Yep.
pay a commission? Sure. So I started doing that a little bit that year, just kind of when people call me, all right, let me connect you with that person. And all of a sudden at the end of the year, I brought in like $80,000 by making some connections. I was like, huh, that was
Yeah.
that was pretty easy, right? Like, I kind of wasn't paying attention because I was just,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the year, I do my taxes and I was like, all right, let me see, add everything up. I'm like, holy crap. Like, so it was like, a couple bigger deals for like 10 grand, eight
Mhm.
grand, 5 grand. And then a lot of like monthly recurring stuff from like, SEO type stuff or social
Yeah.
media stuff that hooked up one guy, was charging somebody 2,500 bucks a month. He's giving me 250.
Yeah.
3,500 bucks a month. I make 350. 10% was kind of around the range, but all of a sudden I was bringing in like I don't know, 2 grand, 3 grand a month on
Mhm.
recurring
Totally
stuff.
passive.
That passive. That and
Totally
I was
passive
like, all
income.
right, so that was 30, 40 grand. And then those other couple deals where it's like, I remember I had hooked up a guy that did animation and he did one small job for my buddy, then another job. And then this is when I really started to think, oh, this thing could work. All of a sudden, after like 2 months, he calls me, 2 or 3 months. I hadn't heard from him. He goes, hey, Joe, I just got paid by that customer again. Send me an invoice for the commission. The commission was $10,000. I was like, so basically, after 3 months of not hearing from this guy, he's like, hey, yo, I did all this work for the company that you introduced me to. Send me that. And I was like, and it was very trustworthy of him to do that. And a lot of this business is still to Connective, have to trust people. But if I'm going to be bringing you the $60,000 worth of business that he did for me to make the I got 15% for it, like that's nice business for him. So if he wants to screw me, and I would find out because he was doing it for my buddy,
Sure.
so eventually you'd be like, oh, hey Joe, let's have a beer. But oh, your buddy Dan is it's been great. I'm like, oh, you're still using Dan? And that's when I call you, be like, hey Dan, you just shut your pipeline off. Like I introduced you
Mhm.
to a company, you did all. So, but that's what I knew. I was like, all right, this could be something. Like I just made 10 grand by doing nothing except sending an invoice out. So then I said, well, what if I got other people like me that enjoy connecting and have good, two things, either company has good products or services. Not everyone's going to be a salesman or a connector.
Right.
And then a bunch of people that really like connecting. And then what if we incentivize them? Because there's no incentive on LinkedIn, right? It's like,
Yeah.
connect me on LinkedIn. All right, Dan. Well, I know we've met at some party, some networking event, but I don't know you to stick my neck out. Well, what if I incentivize you by paying you, right? So the connective is, really about bringing really great people in, which we've really now after like 3 years, like we have a solid group, and it's starting
Yeah.
to grow. Like the people are, and that's by design, right? Like there's nothing wrong with the BNI group. BNI is fantastic. I owe a lot to BNI, and I was in it for years, and it was great. But it's kind of on a small scale, local stuff. Like you have a local business that you want to do work with, a website for local dentist and local real estate agent wants to do it. It's fantastic, bar none, the best around. And the
Yeah.
tip and all those other things are great, but they will kind of let anyone in that wants to be in, right? It's
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
much of a vetting process, right? Because it's a membership model, right? The BNI makes money off of membership. The more members they
Yeah.
have, the more money they make. That's how they make money. So how they're
Mhm.
not going to be too strict about saying, "Well, Dan, I don't like your attitude." Like, all right, well, let's deal with this guy. He's still paying us $600 a year to be in the group. So we charge a fee, but I'm not just letting anyone in the group. Like, there's been a lot of people who are like, "No way, that guy's coming in the group." Or no.
Well, I was gonna ask you, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the points that you're making about the connective, that it's the idea of referring businesses and the idea of connecting. You even mentioned LinkedIn. One of the biggest problems that I think face a lot of these networking organizations and that face networks in general and LinkedIn and in particular when you're talking about somebody who's building a massive network is quality, right? How do you judge, how do you maintain quality and thereby maintain value for all of the members? So a BNI and I'm not going to badmouth BNI. I'm not a member, but I understand what you're saying. If it's just a matter of paying a membership fee and joining, there's very little attention paid to the quality of who's coming through the door.
Mhm.
Maybe they won't last. Maybe the weeds get rooted out. Who knows? But you're doing something different from the get go, and with the connective. because look, I mean, you accepted me into the into the
Well,
organization, so I don't know what that says.
Nikki paid me under the table. But
Oh, well, but
yeah, just
that's the first thing, right?
yeah,
I had to be referred by somebody who was already in
yeah,
the organization. And then I had to put a little skin in the game because, it is a membership
yeah,
organization as well. But, it's all about making the connections for people or selling your products or whatever. I'm there as a connector, as somebody who is trying to help whoever's on the connective, with whatever thing that they need help with by introducing them to somebody that I know in my network,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But at the same time, I've also gotten a tremendous amount of value from the connective because of my podcast guests. I mean, it's not a direct money thing. I don't make any money on the podcast. It's purely it's a labor of love at this point. But the learning that I'm getting and the potential here for future connections based on, what the people on the connective have been so generous to give me in their knowledge and in their time.
yeah,
I have no doubt that this is an investment for me for the future. That the the amount of money that I'm paying to be a member of the connective is, a bargain
yeah.
for what I'm getting. But the point is, right, that you have to judge the quality. Otherwise, the network is not going to work. So what's your formula?
Yeah. So again, when I started it, the money to join a group is two things, right? One, it was paying for breakfast, right? So I was
Hmm.
like, look, I'll put this group together, but everyone pay their own, their own way for breakfast. And initially, people just paid for breakfast and they went or whatever. Then I was like, you know what? I just
Yeah.
gotta. I'll go into one place. I'll just take care of it. It's whatever it is. But it also, you need some skin in the game, right? And that got people there. Like if you're in something for free, like you tend to not go because you're like, oh, I didn't pay. I got to get out of bed. So it's like, oh, I paid $500. I want to get that money back.
Hmm.
So it's a very, and it's a little vetting process too, where it's like, people are like, $500. Like, oh, I'm like, listen, maybe it's not for you. It's okay. It's not for everybody. But yeah, when I started, I was like, let me look at who, I want to build a networking group. And I thought about this for a while. Like, I want to build a group of people that people are dying to get in. People are like, hey, Dan, can you get me in that group? Like that's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. It's still the goal, right? And we're getting there where it's like people are like, "Hey, I'm hearing about this, and my friends in it. Like, I want to get this guy." Like, so I invited people initially that I knew. Just I knew they would be good for the group. So we started it out with like I don't know about 10 people one night in Hoboken, and I paid for dinner for everyone, and that was going to be the original thing. Then I got the bills like $800. I'm like, all right, we can't do that every month, like, and but it was kind of like, all right, I want to bring really good people in. That from the start was like, I'd rather have 10 solid people in this group than 50 just okay people, right? And it's still been the mantra the whole time. So when we started out, it was yeah, okay, you guys are in, come to the group. I'll tell you what the idea I have to do, how we're going to run this, how people are going to make money and introductions and all that stuff. And then, not everyone joined. Some people didn't have the time, or some people like, I don't know, I just wanted the people that got it, like, this is freaking awesome. All right, you're in. Like the people that were like, this is wait, what are you doing? Like, I'm in. Like, so and still to that day to now, I want people to explain what it is. Like, I want people to get it really quickly. If I have to explain it, like I've had a bunch of people that like after explaining it again, I'm like, Dan, thanks for coming, but I can't like if I have to explain this, you're not gonna you just don't grasp what's going on. And it's fine, right? Some people just don't get it. And I've kicked people out because one guy had to kick out because like, well, you got me connection to CEO, but my boss said he's not gonna make any connections for this group just because of that. So it's not any like quid pro quo thing here. I'm like, well, yeah, it kind of is. Like it's kind of like we're all here to help each other. So like I don't, he was upset that I told him he's out, but I'm like, you're obviously not getting what the purpose of this group is. So, so yeah, originally it's the people I invited, and then it's like, okay, let's slowly added a couple people, and then we started doing chapters, and it kind of got away from me, right? At one point, like one somebody wanted to open up another chapter. I was like, all right, well, business wise, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. We start opening more chapters, more people, we share in the revenues and stuff, and I started having like 4 or 5 chapters, and then it was just chasing members. All of a sudden, I'm chasing members, I'm trying to get members because when you show up to a meeting, you want to have members there, or otherwise people aren't going to join a group that has 5 people. And now I'm spending my time starting to build a BNI model. Like, holy shit! So one day I'm laying in bed going to sleep. I'm like, fucking a, this is not what I want to do. So the next day I got up like, no more chapters. You guys are all out. You guys are all in. You want to come? We're going to be in New York City, the hot spot of it all. Like this is where business is getting done. You might live in Jersey, but we're going to New York, and that's where we're going to do business. And if you want to come, come. Here's when we're meeting. And I got rid of about 25 people and just said, you 20 are the ones that I want. 5 people didn't come. Some are just like, listen, it's an hour and a half each way for me to get to the city minimum, and or whatever it might be. So we kind of restarted it and said, all right, back to the here's the 15 people that are really good, and that's where it really kind of actually started to go in the right direction and really kind of take off. So
Well, it's interesting because, now you're talking about, people showing up for breakfast and going to the city and, there's a couple things happening at once now because this is not long ago. This is just the last couple of years,
yeah,
right? So, you're talking about having an in-person networking group that is, a little bit old school when you think about it. You meet up, you make connections, you learn to trust one another. You talk about your business and then you decide, whether or not you're going to be able to make referrals and you decide to help people, right? Now, before 2020, we might have said that you need to have those breakfasts and you need to have those lunches, right? But then the pandemic comes, right? You shift everything to a digital model, and luckily, or maybe I don't know, serendipitously, I don't know, the technology exists for us to conduct such activities without ever leaving the privacy of our home. So, and this is where I got involved is because, as I was branching out during this kind of whole stay at home time, and looking into developing my own entrepreneurial side, but also more my creative side than anything else. That's where Nikki said, you might want to check out Joe in this group. So I don't think I would have done it if it required me to get in a car and go an hour and a half, or it required me to get on a train an hour and a half earlier than I might have. Like the whole, from the comfort of my home feature was a critical part of my decision making process. I will tell you, but be that as may, like you had to shift the whole thing to an online model. So how did that affect the membership or your approach? Did anything change in the nature of the connective once you did that?
yeah. I mean, it's grown since, so it was actually no one wants to say it was a good thing, but for me it was
Yeah.
because we went from meeting once a month to meeting once a week. Like, hey, we can meet every week now. It's just as easy.
Mhm.
We do it for an hour instead of spending 3 hours getting there, spending an hour and a half to meeting, and getting home. It's like just come on Wednesdays, we'll do an hour, and let's see where it goes. And so we really started getting to know each other quicker because what was happening before that was like, all right, I don't want to meet every week like other groups do. That's a lot. Let's meet once a month. That's all we need. But it wasn't really enough because you come to a meeting, you get all excited about stuff, and then you forget about the connector for a month until you come back. And you're like, oh, you get all excited again, and you forget. So meeting once a week was great. Then meeting once a week was too much too for people. Like, all right, I got other stuff I got to do. So now we meet every other week. So we've adjusted through this whole time and pivoted. So now it's every other week. We meet, we do our thing. It's all business. We're like, I mean, we have fun in the group. Like
Yeah.
we joke around a little bit, but like it's all right. Let's do a presentation. Let's do our thing. Let's meet each other, break out, and all that. And we're here for an hour, and we're out. And then the other weeks we do our other thing with connecting with people and stuff like that. So it's really just getting a good group together and giving those tools to connect. We only need an hour, like, and then we have
Mhm.
that separate time that everyone meets and does their own thing. So it's all about making sure we got great people and they're meeting each other, getting to know each other, and that's so we have the tools to do that through this. And now people are starting to meet a little bit in person again. But moving forward, no, I'm not. There's no reason to go
Mhm.
back to the city. Unfortunately, which will stink for the place where we're having breakfast every month for 300, $400, wherever it was. But you know, getting on for an hour on a Wednesday and not having to commute is great. And we'll probably what we're most likely going to do is just do a quarterly happy hour. So you still want, you still need that personal touch and
Yep.
shaking somebody's hand and giving them a hug and having a couple drinks and or maybe a couple more drinks and really getting to
Yeah.
know some people and having some fun with them and that helps as well, getting that personal connection to somebody, right?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
some people in the connective I've never met in person.
Yeah, I've never
I
like,
mean,
I clearly haven't. I
yeah,
mean, I met
so
you, but I haven't met a lot of people in
yeah,
person, and,
yeah,
I'd love to meet, like, Glenn in Florida, and Glenn was on my podcast, and Raymond was on my pod I've never met these guys in person.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
they're both in Florida, as it turns out, but, another thing that really occurred to me about the connective as well, and about just even this conversation now, we've mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times. I'm a big LinkedIn fan, right? I've been on the platform since 2003, like basically since LinkedIn started.
Yeah.
So, I'm a LinkedIn granddaddy, I suppose. I don't have as many people in my network as like some of those like, people who have been collecting people for like all the time for years and years, but I have thousands, I have
Yeah.
a few people, like I have a few people. And that, having that many folks in my network is one of the reasons why, I am glad to be part of the Connective because, it makes me think, okay, now I can reach into my network and see if anybody's interested in some of the things that I hear on the Connective. It's not about monetizing the network. It's about having the potential for it. But it's not, it doesn't matter if it happens or not. I feel like I'm helping people. I feel like I'm connecting people. And it's really what I would do anyway. I would be talking to people and saying, "Oh, geez, I just heard about this guy who's doing, contact tracing." And, it blew my mind because I'm a curious person. That's why I
Yeah.
have the podcast.
Yeah.
I love the Connective is another way that I satisfy my curiosity. But like I hear about this new business. And I'll talk to like 5 or 10 people who I know in my network about this. And then, sadly it kind of poofs from my brain as I get another thing coming up. But you know what? Those kinds of things will continue. And I have no doubt that, I'm helping to, add to the value of my network that way. But anyway, this is a long way of saying that, for a long time I was thinking that, LinkedIn is kind of the way that networking has moved. And LinkedIn is your own kind of Rolodex, or your own, file of contact database of people. And I thought that that would be kind of, the way to go. But then I get to the Connective, which in many ways is a back to basics. Let's meet in person. Let's talk about let's meet each other and build trust and get to know each other, and then, you know, refer business to one another. And I have to say that, it's a good compliment. They complement one another pretty nicely.
They do. But the problem again with LinkedIn, and I don't have, I don't want to say problem because I use it every day, all day
Yeah.
long, and it's a fantastic tool. It's a tool to see who you're connected to, right? So
Mhm.
it's just, beyond that, it's not, it's just
Yeah.
a way to connect each other, right? So, but
Yeah.
you have to have that personal connection to somebody for them to respond to you, right? And that's
Right.
was a big problem with LinkedIn when I started Connected was like, hey Dan, again we mentioned it before. Hey Dan, listen, can you connect me to Glenn Zimmerman? You're like, you just wouldn't respond to me because I met you at a networking party 6 months ago, and you're like, I
Yeah.
don't even remember you. Like, no, I'm not going to connect you to my clients that I don't know who you are or what you
Yeah.
do or how you are. So no freaking way. So that was part of my problem was like there's no incentive with LinkedIn to do that connection.
Mhm.
But now, even so, when there is an incentive, like when we connect to somebody through the Connective, you still have to know that person.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so connect to LinkedIn is great. Like, who knows Ray McConnell? Great. Oh, Joe Mindak knows Ray McConnell. Can you connect me to him? Yeah, Ray's been my best friend since second grade. Let me make a phone call to him. I think I can get him to answer me. Right. And then it's so it has to be that warm connection, right? That someone's going to respond to you. And then it's like, hey, you know, there's a reason you should talk to Dan Nessel. Why? Right? I think you should talk to Dan Nessel. I think you'd be great on his podcast.
Yeah.
And this is what he does with his podcast. And oh yeah, you know what? I'd like to talk to him about it. And then that's where you make the connection. Problem with a lot of groups and a lot of things. Again, LinkedIn, there's no incentive to make the connection if you don't know the person. And in B and I and networking groups, people just throw out connections because they want to be on the chart of who made the most referrals that month, right? So you get, I have 10 awards with a piece of paper and a cheap frame that say I made the most referrals, but people want to get on that referral list to make sure it looks like they're contributing to the group, but they do it the wrong way. Like, oh, Dan, you want a podcast? Here, talk to my friend here. And you would call the person, be like, hey, Joe told me to call you. Be like, well, I don't like talking to people. Like, I don't want to be on
Mhm.
a podcast. Like, oh, why did, so people throw out these referrals just to get on the list, and they're not
Yeah.
good referrals. So like when we do it now, it's like, hey, go to LinkedIn, like you said, it's a great tool. Who do I know that knows that person that somebody wants to meet? Oh,
Mhm.
this person knows him. Do you know him well enough? Yeah. And a lot of times that I tell everyone to connect him, just don't come back and be like, Joe, and I think you've even done it. Like, yeah, Joe, I don't know that person. We worked together 5 years ago, but let me reach out and see what I can do. Like,
Yeah.
don't even bother. If you don't think Like if you don't say to me, sure, I can reach out to them. Of course, and that's the part of building personal connections. It's like some people I could call that I haven't talked to in 5 years. They'll pick up the phone because like we did something together, either it's personal or business, or I did something good for them in the past, where they're going to respond to you. A lot of people on LinkedIn, it's amazing the way that people won't respond on LinkedIn, right? And I think people got to remember that, right? This is a lesson. Like, listen, I know you, and I expect if I don't know you, fine. Like I met you 5 years ago, and I say, Dan, hey, I need something from you, and you're like, f off. I don't know who you are, Joe, but I know you, and I know you personally, or I've done something for like this one guy that I know. And I'll never mention any names, but I helped his wife with a lot of stuff, like, and he knows it. And I even did some stuff for like, and it's like I'll send a note, be like, dude, I want to talk to you about this. Nothing big. I don't
Mhm.
want to see if you want to buy life insurance from me or whatever. I got this, and I think it'll actually. And one person I reached out about the Connective, like, I think your business would be perfect for this. Like,
Mhm.
I can actually help you more by you joining this group than you could do for me. And then not respond, and to know on LinkedIn, I don't know if you know on LinkedIn, like you could see if somebody reads your message, right? Their little head pops up, their profile picture pops up. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but I'll know if you don't respond, if you read it and then don't respond. Like, so it says, and then it's like, really, like, listen, when you come to me next year and you lost your job, hey, Joe, listen, Dan Nessel, right? I'm interviewing for his company. Oh, good for you. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you really want me to respond now? Like, how about you remember this when I reach out to you when I want to talk about something? And I don't,
It's important. It's really important, especially now because it's online networking or building your network on LinkedIn and whatever else, whatever other social networks you're using, whatever tools you're using. There's the concept of karma is alive and well. I mean, it's really important to keep your karma in net positive. Your social capital, whatever you want to call it, where you are you're burning. If you burn a bridge, that's you're not just cutting off one person. You're cutting off every person that
yeah,
person knows,
yeah,
right? So, you wanna maintain the at least a little modicum of kind of if you don't have time to help somebody, at least be honest about it and say, "Look, I'm at capacity right now." In fact, the best thing I heard recently on LinkedIn in the last year, in the last year, my LinkedIn network has almost doubled, and it's been really hard to keep up with all of the inquiries that come in.
mhm,
And a lot of that is because, I wasn't as directed in growing my network, and I've learned a couple lessons along the way, but still, I try to make sure that I respond when I know that the person who's reaching out to me is genuine, like when it's
yeah,
not an automated mail, because I can spot the automated ones now.
sure,
But when it's not, and but I want to like I can't help most of the folks I can't help. Most of the people I don't have time to really respond to, and most of them, the vast majority, aren't quite what I'm looking for or asking for. There's nothing that there's no way we can do business together.
yeah,
But if they're earnest and they're honest, and I understand I understand where they're coming from. I mean, I think I should at least respond to them and say, give them the kind of the dignity of a response and say, look, I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm at capacity right now. Let's just keep in touch. Keep an eye on my content. I'll watch yours. If something appeals to you, reach out again.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
And just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, I've been reaching out to people. I have an intern right now that's just doing for my other company, just reaching out to 50
Hmm.
people every other day on LinkedIn. And it's amazing where the conversations go. Some lead to absolutely nowhere. And in 10 minutes, we're like, thanks, good talking to you, Dan.
Yeah.
Go. And it's fine. But other conversations have led to great things, even if it's not what I'm talking to them about, at least
Hmm.
something else, or at least one guy I connected to an investor. They're like, your company sounds great. Let me introduce. Like, it could lead to something for both sides or just one side. If it's not my side, that's
Yeah.
okay too. I had a lady come on. She wouldn't even get on. Get on. She scheduled half an hour. Wouldn't even get on the video, and then was so like out of tune and didn't care. Like, just you spent that half an hour. You have that half an hour. You took it out of your schedule. We spent like 15 minutes on the phone, 20 minutes of me basically talking, her just kind of, I don't
Hmm.
know what she was doing, but not really listening. It's like, you don't know where that could have led. You don't know who I
Yeah.
know or what I could have led you to. Who you might want to talk to could be my roommate from college, or could be my cousin, or could be someone I know so well that I could be like, wow, I could be a great. And the fact, and it's like now she's connected with me on LinkedIn. I'm just like, don't ever reach out to me for anything. I don't
Yeah.
care if you need, whatever. It's just like, why would you waste that half an hour you had? She wasted it for me and wasted it for herself. Like, just don't take
It's
the meeting. It's okay. Like, I don't need to meet with you, but like, if you
I'm not
took
gonna
the
get hurt.
meeting, then spend 15, 20 minutes talking to me.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you
yeah.
never know where it could lead to. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
absolutely. And it's, it's interesting that not only are people sort of, blowing off the meetings or not, not being serious about that. The whole meaning of LinkedIn when it started years and years ago was like this power of this weak connection. So if I had a couple hundred connections or even 1,000, whatever, you know, you were talking earlier, do you know so and so? Can you introduce this person's in your network?
Yeah.
Can you introduce Jim to John? And I'd be like, if it was like 10 years ago, I would have been like, absolutely, I'm going to introduce Jim to John. And I would just shoot like a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, John, we met, at a party months ago, got your business card and,
Yeah.
we're connected on LinkedIn. And, by the way, I've got this friend, John or Jim, I forget which way I put it, but the other person who seems to have something that based on your profile might be of interest to you.
Yeah.
Here you go. Good luck. And that would be it. Like I'd make the intro and never felt bad about it. And oftentimes like people were just like totally cool and open. It's like, yeah, I want to increase my network. Growing my network was an important thing. Now though, it is absolutely different. If of my thousands of first degree connections, you're absolutely right. If somebody asks me to reach out to one of my first degree connections, those first degree connections aren't all equal, right? So, there was a time when being a first degree connection was like, okay, like I can actually could talk to this person.
Yeah.
But it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
There's a core to that group of connections, then there's like an outer circle and even outer circle, and there's a lot of first degree connections. Look, I was following somebody recently on LinkedIn, and I forget who it was, but they said, you know what? It's time to do a network cleanse. It's time to will you join me? Who's up for it? Who's going to go through and like every 10th name, like decimate it, just
Yeah.
knock out 1 out of 10 people, see what happens. I'm not brave enough to do that just yet, but
Yeah.
I think it's an exercise that might be valuable in the future. But look, with the connective and with the way that our group is, you know, meets every couple weeks. I don't know everybody in the group like super well, but I know them well enough to know that if I ever got a request from somebody to introduce me to, you know, this person or that person, that person, I would do it in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
right? Because we at least have built that trust and have built that level of we're all in it together. And I think that hybrid where you're going to have this, increasingly huge online network, but you're going to have an increasingly dear and close offline network and a hybrid thereof. It's probably going to be more prevalent in the future. I don't know, and I know
Yeah.
the connective is going to be a big part of that. So where's the connective going, Joe? Is there any what's the future for the connective?
So right now, I am finishing up the back end of the website with some more features and stuff that will just let it grow a little more. Right now, it's
Mhm.
it's, it's me kind of running it. There's 30, 5 people in the group, maybe somewhere around that. So it's easy to run manually. Now it's like, okay, how do we expand this to Chicago and LA and other places
Mhm.
to have other clusters of connectives? So next phase is to there's 2 phases. One is to grow it to other cities, and then, so we have not just the New Yorkers that we're all in this group here. We're mainly
Mhm.
all New Yorkers. Like, what about LA? What about Chicago? Like, who's a good connector out there? Who could be the connector in chief in LA? Who could be there
Mhm.
that could bring 30, 40 people together, and then we could all connect to each other. So that's the next part. But I needed that. I needed the back end to be able to.
Mhm.
Now you're talking about a couple hundred people. Like, and there's a
Yep.
lot to keep track of with referrals and things like that. And then there's a whole nother phase, which I won't talk about. That's pretty cool. I talk about it on our calls, but I won't.
Right.
A lot of the connective is interesting. Like, you think you want to grow a business. I've been very close to the vest with this whole thing. I don't want to talk about what I'm doing too much. I've only just
Mhm.
started talking about it recently. I did a podcast last week and this one, but I'm only starting to talk about it a little bit now because, again, no secret sauce. The good thing about the connective technology is not going to take me out. There's not going to be a new technology that comes along that does what my back end does better, right? I mean, there will be, but it's not something that's going to wipe out my technology. It's not Facebook coming in to
Mhm.
wipe out MySpace or something like that. Like,
Right.
there's no technology that could take my business down, right? It's also recession proof, right? Because like we've seen here, like it wasn't a
Yeah.
recession, but we saw that some businesses were hurting. Great. If your business is hurting, you have ability to make money off of the other people in the group, right? Wow. How
Hmm.
cool is that? So no matter what's going on, if one business is doing bad, you can still make money off of another business because you're getting a cut, right? And then the biggest thing is it's the people, right? Like
Yeah.
I know you, you know Nikki. Like I don't, someone
Hmm.
else is going to come in and be like, hey Dan, I got another group that's better than Connected. Like no, I'm tight with these people now. Okay,
Yeah.
this group of people is really it's going well. I'm seeing value in what's going on. I don't want to be in another group. I want to be in this group. So it's all about bringing the right people in. And that's why it's so important to bring those right people in. And we have a great group of people right now. It's like really everyone gels and everyone. It's been going like that for a while. But so you can't take away that personal connection, right? Like
Yeah.
someone else is going to come in and be like, why don't you guys all come over to my group over here now? It's like no, we're in here. We like making fun of Giussano's Cesare and like
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
there's things about being a little more personal in the group, so you can't take that away. So,
I'm a believer, as you know, and I'm a member, and I'm glad to have become friends as well with you and with others in the group. If anybody out there is interested in finding out more about the Connective, you can always reach out to me or reach out to Joe. Joe Mindak. His name will be spelled properly in the episode title. You can look him up on LinkedIn. Joe, where else can people find information about the Connective?
there's not a lot out there. I don't
Is
like I
it
said.
is it just
It,
person to person still?
yeah, pretty
Still word of
much.
mouth?
I mean, there's the website, the connective.me, but it's very little up there again because I'm not looking to grow this to be like I want a million people to start calling me to join because it's really an invite only type of community, right? We're really strict, and that's kind of almost counterintuitive, right? You want to grow a business, but you don't want to let everyone in. It's like no, I want to let people in, but I want to let the right people in, right? Not to sound like I don't want to sound whatever, but it's like the people that are going to come and be a part of it, that want to grow and want to help everyone else grow. That's the right people, right? You don't have to be the best, biggest company in the world or most successful. Like you have to be someone that's willing to come in and help everyone in the group out, no matter what it might be. And there's people helping out, not just in business. There's like connections. Let me help your wife get a job. Let me help this person. Lee Wilson wrote a nice letter for a kid in town here to help him get into college. Like, can you help me? Like everyone that helps in a lot of different ways. So that's the type of person I want in a group. That's really looking
Well, if
good.
that
So
sounds like you, if you're one of the listeners, if you sounds like you and it sounds like something you're interested in, reach out to me or reach out to Joe. And look, beyond that, I hope that we can have this a continuation of this conversation, Joe, because we didn't even get a chance to talk about your next level budding career as a country music singer songwriter or
well,
just songwriter.
no, it's just a songwriter. You don't want to hear. You heard me talk. You do not want to hear me sing. It's pretty bad. But yeah, I just got a new song came out today. So I'm
Well,
still.
that I can't wait to hear more about that. But listen, Joe, Renaissance man, serial entrepreneur, friend, mentor. You've helped me out as well in so many ways. I am so glad to be connected with you. I'm so glad to be part of the Connective, and I'm really glad you came on my show. So,
Yeah.
Joe Mindak, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's been great. We can talk for a lot longer, but I know we have to cut it off at some point. But thanks so much. I'm glad I finally came on, and it's a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, me too. And you're welcome back anytime. Believe me. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.